Hey everyone, and welcome back to the From Brokenness to Fullness podcast. I'm Jeanith Padilla, and today we are continuing our Made New series with a message that is very close to my heart. Today's episode is called Living from Overflow, Not Exhaustion. And I want to begin with a question. Have you ever found yourself asking, why am I always tired? Not just physically tired, but so tired, emotionally tired, mentally tired, spiritually tired. Yes, you love God, you love your family, you're grateful for your blessings, but somehow you still feel depleted. And maybe you've become so used to living tired that you think it's normal. Maybe you've convinced yourself that exhaustion is simply part of being responsible, part of being a mother, part of being successful, part of being a wife, part of serving others. But what if that's not true at all? What if God never intended for us to live constantly overwhelmed and exhausted? Maybe the problem isn't that you're doing too little. Maybe you're carrying too much. Maybe you've learned how to survive, but forgotten how to abide. And honestly, I know that feeling very well. I've spent most of my life working hard. I've always been ambitious. I've always wanted to grow. I've always wanted to make a difference. And while many of those things were blessings from God, there were seasons when I was constantly busy, always moving, always producing, always trying to do more. And honestly, I thought busyness meant significance. I thought productivity meant value. I thought resting meant failing or falling behind. But eventually, I realized something. I was trying to pour from an empty cup. And no matter how much I gave, there was never enough. Because empty people eventually become exhausted people. And exhausted people often begin living from pressure instead of peace. Pressure to perform, pressure to provide, pressure to please everyone, pressure to keep everyone happy, pressure to meet expectations, pressure to prove themselves. And maybe some of you listening today know exactly what it feels like. But Jesus never invited us into burnout. Matthew 11:28 says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." I love that verse because Jesus didn't say, "Come to me once you've figured everything out." He didn't say, come to me after you've finished serving everyone else. He didn't say, come to me when you finally have time. He simply said, come. And I think many people are waiting for life to slow down before they come to Jesus. But Jesus is inviting us to bring our weariness to Him now, not later. Now. And one of the greatest lessons God has taught me over the years is this: my worth does not increase when I become busier. Busyness is not a badge of honor. Rest is not laziness. And listen to this: peace is productive. And perhaps the biggest shift in my life happened when I stopped striving and started abiding. John 15:5 says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Notice that fruit is a byproduct of connection, not striving, not exhaustion, not constant hustle, but connection, abiding, remaining. And honestly, that's where overflow comes from. Not from doing more, but from staying connected to the source. Because you cannot give what you do not have. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And for me, God began teaching me the importance of healthy rhythms, morning worship, time in His Word, prayer, exercise, protecting my peace, spending intentional time with my family, our nightly family devotions, observing Sabbath, learning to say no, simplifying life, focusing on what truly matters. And I realized something beautiful. The most important things in life are often the things we neglect first when we become busy. And maybe today, God is inviting you to slow down. Not because He wants less from you, but because He wants more for you. Psalm 23 begins with these words: The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. A shepherd leads, a shepherd protects, a shepherd provides, and sheep were never designed to carry themselves. They follow the shepherd. Maybe some of us are exhausted because we've been trying to carry responsibilities God never asked us to carry. Trying to control things only God can control. Trying to save everyone. Trying to fix everyone. Trying to become everything for everyone. And maybe God is saying, my child, you don't have to carry that anymore. Because God never called you to save everyone. He already sent a savior. And perhaps that's one of the most freeing truths I've learned. I don't have to do everything. I don't have to say yes to everything. I don't have to meet everyone's expectations. I don't have to prove my worth because my worth has already been settled at the cross. And maybe someone listening today needs permission to rest, permission to slow down, permission to protect their peace, permission to say no, permission to choose what matters most. Because resting is not quitting, resting is trusting. And overflow comes from abiding, not striving. So today, I want to ask you, where are you exhausted? What are you carrying that God never asked you to carry? What expectations are draining your joy? And what would your life look like if you stopped living from pressure and started living from peace? Because Jesus didn't die so that you could merely survive. He came so that you could have life and have it abundantly. Thank you so much for being here today. And if this episode encouraged you, share it with someone who may need this reminder too. Next episode, we're going to talk about what happens when God calls us higher and why obedience often requires courage. I love you guys. And remember, you were never meant to live exhausted. And Jesus doesn't just improve lives, He makes people new. I love you and God bless. Bye for now.